Canadians are nice people, friendly people. And if they have some constructive criticism, it doesn't come off harsh. You know, so it's like, ugh.
They put it where it's very simple and you can understand it, where it don't come off as harsh. So
yeah, so he thought he was in America. Well, the United States of America. That's what he thought he was.
Yeah, he should have dubbed that out, my boy. What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchets REACT, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction. Super excited about this video, guys. If you're new to us
and we're new to you,
make sure you scroll down,
hit that subscribe button,
and turn on the post notification bell
because we're on the road to 100K.
And we cannot get there without you guys, all right? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
Hello everyone, my name is JJ. So in today's video, I am going to tell you about the two most controversial opinions that I have ever expressed in my career as an opinion journalist here in Canada. Both of the stories involve Quebec, which is the French-speaking province of Canada. If you are not from Canada, these two stories will probably seem pretty strange, but they will also hopefully help you understand just what a strange country Canada is, particularly the strange role that Quebec plays in Canadian politics and culture. Okay, so back in 2014, I was working for the Canadian edition of the Huffington Post, and at one point I got into a bit of a Twitter spat with this other Canadian journalist. He was an English guy writing for this English magazine, and yet he would sometimes tweet in French, which I always found a little bit obnoxious. Now, you see, Canada is officially a bilingual country. It has two official languages, French and English. It says so right in the Canadian Constitution. However, the vast majority of Canadians can only speak English. Almost all of the French-speaking Canadians live in the province of Quebec, which was settled by the French and is the only part of Canada where French is the language of day-to-day life. There is only a small minority of Canadians who claim to be fluent in French and English. It's usually estimated at around 17% of the population, and these are disproportionately people who live in and around Quebec. However, because Canada is officially a bilingual country, it is considered important for all of the people in the top government jobs, which includes politicians and bureaucrats and judges and so forth, to be fluent in both French and English. This has the effect of concentrating a great deal of political power into a very small segment of the population, particularly bilingual Quebecers. There is a lot of denial and snobbery about this basic reality of Canada, however. A lot of bilinguals, particularly Quebec bilinguals, tend to minimize how difficult it is to learn a second language that you don't have any need for in your day-to-day life. And let's be clear, the vast majority of Canadians do not have a need for French in their day-to-day life. So anyway, my dust-up with the guy on Twitter inspired me to write a column on this topic.
Unless they go to Quebec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
unless they go to Quebec.
Vacationing, right?
Vacationing, visiting family, maybe like a grandma.
Yeah, because we typically Americans, United States, in the United States,
yeah,
the vast majority of us only know one language.
True, but we are a bilingual state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
We're not. What's not that? It's not, Spanish not
We don't have an official language. We just all speak whatever we speak, but the majority of us speak English.
Because it's not written down, but we do have a lot of people who talk different languages.
Yeah, like in Texas, when we first moved to Texas, we was like, we need to learn Spanish.
Yeah, real talk.
Yeah, and we learned it like in school, but we didn't think that we would
have to use it on a regular basis. But we talk to people and they, especially like workers sometimes as well. That's another story.
It depends on where you live.
But yeah, we're not in Quebec.
Right. Back to the story.
For the Huffington Post. I will now read you part of it. I was considering reading the whole thing, but I don't want to make this video too long. So the headline they put on it was, "Let them learn French. Canada's bilingual elite hold all the power." And here's part of what I wrote. To be Prime Minister of Canada, you have to know French. To be Governor General of Canada, you have to know French. To be Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, you have to know French, and debate rages about the other 8. To be head of the Bank of Canada, the Canadian Armed Forces, the CRTC, or the CBC, you have to know French. In 2012, Parliament voted unanimously in favor of making it mandatory for the Auditor General, the Chief Electoral Officer, and a number of commissioners, including those for privacy, information, and ethics, to know French. Above a certain rank, most federal bureaucrats, regardless of what province they work in, invariably hit a promotional glass ceiling unless they know French. This is an awful lot of power to concentrate in just 17% of the population. If you heard of some third world dump where a linguistic minority of less than 20% held a permanent legally protected monopoly on all of the country's top jobs, you'd probably think it wasn't much of a democracy. democracy. So anyway, this column was super controversial. It was particularly controversial in Quebec, where they understand this issue a bit differently. A certain faction of Quebecers really resent having to learn English, so when an English guy like me complains about having to learn French, it comes off as really spoiled and arrogant. And maybe it is a little bit arrogant, but the mathematical reality is that when you have a continent that looks like this, and the goal is effective communication, it makes much more sense for this part to learn English than this part to learn French. So anyway, in those days, I was also working for the Sun News Network, which was this Canadian conservative politics news station that no longer exists. And one of the network's big stars, Ezra Levant, who you may know as the current head of the Rebel website, asked me to go on his show and talk about my column and the controversy it caused. And me and Ezra had a very good chat. He was very sympathetic to my point of view. The whole segment was basically just the two of us agreeing that bilingualism was very elitist and undemocratic. I thought it went very well. Ezra's show did not broadcast live. It was taped in the afternoon and aired in the evening. And just as I was leaving the studio that afternoon, I got a phone call from one of the network executives, and he was like, JJ, I'm really sorry, I didn't want to make this call, but we cannot air what you just did. He told me that the big bosses at the network were all furious and wouldn't allow what I had just taped to go on the air. You see, the big bosses of Sun News were all Quebecers. The parent company was literally called Quebecor. And the
Quebecor.
The Quebecors.
Yeah.
He should have done his research.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's there. He knew.
Well,
it was already controversial.
Not this. Well, he knew it was controversial, but he didn't know the news team cast, the big dogs behind it was Quebecers. So, had he knew, he'd have been like, yeah, I think I'm going to probably do a curveball to this.
Right. Like, Canadians, when it comes to, like, bad comments on our channel, we've only received maybe, like, 3 bad comments from Canadians. It's
not harsh, and it's not, like, crazy. Like, it's not over-flooding our comic session, so big ups to y'all.
Yeah. And, like, y'all are, like, third or fourth place when it comes to the makeup of our channel. So, it's like, Canadians are nice people, friendly people. And if they have some constructive criticism, it doesn't come off harsh. You know, so it's like, ugh.
They put it where it's very simple and you can understand it, where it don't come off as harsh. So
yeah, so he thought he was in America. Well, the United States of America. That's what he thought he was.
Yeah, he should have thought that out, my boy. Should have thought that out.
Boss of Quebecor was this guy called Pierre-Carl Palideau. After the network closed, he went into politics and became head of the Quebec Separatist Party. This was the only time I'd filmed something for Sun News, or anyone else for that matter, that wasn't allowed to be put on the air. And considering a lot of what they did put on the air at Sun News, that's really saying something. Last year, in fact, almost exactly 1 year ago today, there was this big mass shooting at a Quebec mosque. A white guy opened fire during prayers and killed 6 Muslim men. Now, this was obviously a monstrous tragedy and not the kind of thing that people expect to happen in Canada, except that it does happen in Canada a fair bit, but mostly in Quebec. So for the last year, I have been a contributing writer at the Washington Post, writing about Canadian issues for an international audience. And when the mosque shooting happened, they asked me to write something about it. And I did, and I noted how within my lifetime, there had been more acts of mass, politically motivated public violence, terrorism basically, in Quebec than any other part of Canada. In 1984, there was a mass shooting in the Quebec Parliament. In 1989, there was a mass shooting at a prominent Quebec university. In 1992, there was another university shooting. In 2006, there was yet another university shooting. And in 2012, there was a botched mass shooting at a Quebec political rally. So here is part of what I wrote about the phenomenon in the Washington Post. French-speaking Quebec is often held up, and certainly holds itself up, as Canada's most essential region, home to a precious set of peculiarities that help make Canada the marvelous place it is. On issues such as post-secondary education, childcare, and ironically enough, gun control, progressive Canadians laud its social democratic policies as moral exemplars, and the province has played an outsized role in pushing Canadian politics to the left. Privately, English Canadians are far less defensive. They grumble about Quebec's dark history of anti-Semitism, religious bigotry, and pro-fascist sentiment, facts which are rarely included in the otherwise self-flagellating.
Quebec is starting to seem...
Ain't no name for that, but we know what we see. Man, that's
I didn't know it was like this.
Nah, I know. You know, you have trouble around the world.
Definitely.
But when it comes to a comparison, it's like, oh, y'all could do that too? I didn't know y'all was doing that like that.
Yeah, because, I mean, when I think of Canada...
You don't think of that?
I don't think of that. I don't.
You don't think of that at all?
I'm surprised.
official narratives of Canadian history. They complain about the exaggerated deference the province gets from Ottawa as a distinct society and nation within a nation, and its various French supremacist language and assimilation laws, which they blame for creating a place that's inhospitable, arrogant, and yes, noticeably more racist than the Canadian norm. And now they have good reason to observe that the province seems to produce an awful lot of lunatics prone to public massacres who often explicitly justify their violence with an argument of dissatisfaction towards Quebec's unique culture. The mosque shooting has been quickly politicized by the Canadian left, who have seized upon its useful victims to say the sorts of things they were going to say anyway. Canada is both a wicked Islamophobic place that must check its various privileges, and a multicultural utopia whose pride and empathy for its Muslim community knows no bounds. Rather than drag the entire country along for this tendentious ride, it may be more useful to narrow the focus. Now, this article was pretty popular. As I said in the piece, most Canadians consider Quebec to be a sort of...
Now, they usually do that. When things like that happen, you okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's just...
He was getting a little straight to the point. I don't think they're going to allow that. We react to what y'all want us to react to. I'm just trying to see what was the motive here. Why y'all said this? But it's like that, though. Whenever big things happen, mass shootings, they're attacking the whole country and they want to change a whole lot for one person. I mean, for one body of people. All the people, basically.
Yeah.
So...
uniquely chauvinistic part of the country. And a lot of people I heard from agreed that if we were going to treat the mosque shooting as a symbol of anything, it would be much more useful to treat as a case study of Quebec Islamophobia, which is this kind of unique thing, rather than a sweeping indictment of the whole country. But the Quebec government had a very different take. Someone introduced a motion in the Quebec Parliament.
I didn't want to mention it, but nothing wrong with Islam out there, is there?
I don't know. Quebec's starting to sound like their own country to me.
Yeah.
It seems like two opposite types of people.
Especially when he did the difference between the English speaking and the French speaking. It's like everybody's like...
Yeah. And we know some of the history of Canada, but like it's starting to... I don't know. I looked at Canada like it was just this innocent baby.
Nah, they always got that one bad child.
Yeah.
But that's another story.
Denouncing me, and it passed unanimously. And then the Quebec government very ostentatiously wrote this whole letter to the Washington Post, complaining to them for publishing what I'd written. The Washington Post, for their part, stood behind me 100%, and I am still writing for them fairly regularly. I honestly think that from an American perspective, this whole thing seemed pretty silly. I don't think it would ever occur to an American government to formally complain or pass a motion denouncing some author for writing something that they disagreed with, which I guess just gets to the different way that free speech is conceptualized in America versus Canada. The Canadian Parliament in Ottawa tried to pass a motion denouncing me as well, but the Conservative Party withheld unanimous consent, which I'm very grateful for. It is actually relatively common for Canadian politicians to officially denounce journalists who write mean things about Quebec. In 2006, a journalist wrote that some of Quebec's previous massacres might have had a racial element to it. She was denounced by Parliament. Another guy wrote a story about Quebec having the most corrupt government in Canada, and he too was denounced by Parliament.
Okay, so when they are denounced by Parliament, does this mean that they can't write for anyone in the country again? Because no, he's right. I don't ever remember seeing anything about journalists, in the court. Maybe like on popular news TV, but not.
Where's the app where we can
Congress.
get these? Where's the app where we can get these journalists in court? Because they got an app for everything. You know what I'm saying? For the news. An app for everything with the news on it. They got certain newses to target certain groups of people. I didn't know journalists was going to court.
Yeah,
behind stuff they wrote that was obviously presented to the community. Like,
right, I didn't...
How you mad at a person from writing what they seen that just happened that you put on the news? I think what happened is, how the news around the world always have this one motion of saying the same thing? And then when a journalist come around, they expose it for what is something that maybe hasn't been said.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on.
Our freedom of speech and other countries' freedom of speech is totally different. In some places, you got freedom of expression, but it's certain things you just can't cross the line.
Well, as a journalist, again, I think that's something he should have researched. It's like the news crew in Quebec, like the whole Quebec news crew is French. So
yeah, like here we can say, and I kind of wish it was regulated, like for hate speech and all that. Now YouTube does recently, in the recent months, they've been clamping down on people who have hate content. But like,
oh, they doing a lot more.
I just wish that, you know, we were a little bit better nationwide on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, our freedom of speech here, I don't know if we could get away with the things that we're able to do here in other places. Mm-hmm. It's like the good. There's a whole lot of bad, but in other places, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
here,
I get what you're saying.
I feel like we're just all too loose.
Well, we have the
good and the bad.
We have the freedom to do that though.
Yeah,
like,
but
even with let's take journalism as an example. You can write things any type of way you want. So I feel like what you think? You guys answer this as well. What do you think would spread quicker? A journalist writing article or someone posting a video saying it on the media?
Video. Not a lot of people read.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
But, you know, journalists do have ethic laws that they have to follow as well.
I feel
and maybe the laws there were different.
I saw that probably was.
Yeah.
Got to do more research, my guy.
Last year, a guy wrote an article suggesting that Quebecers had a less cooperative spirit than other parts of the country. As far as I know, he wasn't officially denounced by Parliament, but he was denounced by a lot of Quebec politicians and ultimately lost his job. So that's Canada for you. Let me know what you think of these stories in the comments below. Let me know if you think I was in the right or in the wrong, or maybe somewhere in the middle. And let me know if you want to see more videos like this about Canadian politics and drama. If you like...
I feel like he was in the middle. I feel like he went there with an American type of spirit, you know, being able to say things as it is. I guess his opinion there, I mean, you just got to follow the rules of the land.
I think he went there in the middle as well. You need to do a little more research next time.
Yeah.
That's all that is.
So he don't get denounced.
Because you see, there's always ways that you can say things that people can still understand without it being so forward. To the media, or to the people who's reading it, like, such and such did this yesterday. And they be like, oh, I can't believe he's such a good kid. But you say such and such was in this location, prohibited to his last trip to Bahamas and then came back. You know what I'm saying? Like, kind of throw a little mixtures in there.
Yeah.
Well,
we hope you guys enjoyed it.
That's what we doing.
Y'all be trying to make things go left.
That was an eye-opener. I didn't know this was happening in Quebec.
Yeah, so let us know your thoughts positively.
Please.
We hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Like this video, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. We have enabled our super thanks if you like to support the channel that way. Definitely. As well as our join feature to become a VIP member of the channel. Send in your reaction requests through our description box below. We'll see you soon.
Peace.